My dad gave it to me for my 18th birthday, a trip to India with him alone, but mine an envious stepmother with her daughter, they burned my passport the day before departure. Dad is furious. Hi, I turned 18 a couple of days ago. Back and I had to go to his first international trip to India. It was supposed to be a truly special trip, many reasons. My mother died when I was 6, and to cope with loss, my dad and I constantly watched Indian films. They were bright, cheerful, and always raised my spirits mood. That's how I got into Indian culture. Mum also loved Indian cinema. She had a lot of Indian clothes, although she herself had never been there, and I knew India only from movies. Dad also, during my mother's life, he promised us that one day we will definitely go to India all together and we'll have a lot of fun. Unfortunately, Mum died of a brain aneurysm during snow before Dad could save up enough money to take us out of Illinois to India. Then the parents were just over 30, and it was very difficult for us cope with such a loss. Mum was only 32 when she died, and I didn't expect this. My parents were friends. My friends first and only ones. So Dad had a really hard time too. It was a difficult time for everyone, and the only thing that helped me feeling better is a shared thing, watching movies with Dad. It became for a kind of ritual for us. We watched one of my mum's movies, collections, at least once a week, and spent this time together so as not to lose touch. That's how my dad and I started, especially close. And since then there have always been warm relations. I'm sure Mum would be proud of us. When we'll meet her again. She's definitely will be happy with how everything turned out, but except for a couple of things. But in overall, I think she'll be as happy as we are, coped with her loss. In general, it is possible to say that India has always occupied a special place in my heart and in the heart Dad's, and we both dreamed of going there and find out more about this beautiful culture. But we either didn't have money or time. Dad worked a lot, and at some point I almost lost hope that this will ever happen. But on my day, 18 years old, when Dad said, "I hope that we will finally realize our dream," I was absolutely delighted. I literally jumped for joy. And the best, my stepmother and stepsister will come with us on this trip so that we can immediately to clarify. They won't go, not because I didn't want this, but because they would have to miss a lot of important events. If they had decided to do so, join. For example, my step-grandmother Nadia's sisters, she is 17 years old, were just standing their final exams during the trip, and Susan's stepmother had a very important project on the work she had been working on for a long time. So, most likely, she still won't. I could go. I have a strong feeling that Dad did it on purpose, planned the trip for this time so that we could leave together, because I get along especially well with my stepmother and Nadia. But if I'll ask Dad directly, he never does this, won't admit it. So I'll just leave it. It's just a theory. Anyway, Dad told me about this trip in the evening on birthday. Right at the party in front, all my friends, and everyone was genuinely happy for me, except for these two. Of course, you could see it on their faces. They were really upset by what my dad did to me. Such a surprise, an international trip to 18th birthday. When is the party? It ended and the guests left. I heard my dad arguing with his stepmother. Knew for sure that she was arguing with him because of the surprise. Although I couldn't make out all the words. It was clear that I thought that the vacation should have been postponed so that we could go as a family. I'm glad that didn't happen, because for me it would be a real problem for several reasons. Firstly, because I don't get along with stepmother and her daughter, and secondly, because it's difficult with them in principle be nearby, especially on vacation. We've already traveled together a couple of times, and this completely different people from those with whom I want to spend my vacation. So I didn't want them to go with me at all. I already explained why the trip was important to me emotionally, and I wouldn't want that she was spoiled by their presence. So I was really glad that they didn't. They will go. Dad also had quite reasonable reasons not to take them with him. He doesn't want stepmother to miss an important work, but Nadia still couldn't go, because she had exams and school graduation is in a couple of weeks. Shozan and Nadia came into my life about 5 years ago, and at first everyone had a completely normal relationship. They were both quite nice, and so far Dad was just dating Susan. It seemed like they had nothing against me. But then they got married 2 years ago and that's it changed abruptly for no reason. I know for sure that there is nothing wrong on my part, it's changed, so I have no idea why did they suddenly start behaving like this. After the wedding, they both started some weird shit in relation to me, and our relationship gradually began spoil. Okay, I wasn't with it before, especially close to them, but at least the relationship was neutral and polite. And then Susan started treating me like, and Nadia began to copy the behavior my mother. They spoke to me rudely and were intentionally as vile as possible. All this happened when Dad was away, nearby, and as soon as he appeared in the room, they became cute again. It was very strange, and I realized that I had to talk to Dad about it. So I did. Then we had a family conversation where we were supposed to discuss these problems. At first, they denied everything, but luckily I had a recording of one conversation that took place in a couple of days before this, where they behaved it's disgusting with me. So why lie? They couldn't do it any further. Then they had to confess, and they went their separate ways manipulation. Susan and Nadia started crying and tell Dad that they just feel as if I still haven't accepted them as family even after the wedding. Although that's complete nonsense. I actually counted them family. It's just how they treated me, like scum. And after that, they still expected good attitude from me, although yourself, they didn't show even the slightest respect. Dad was very confused because Susan was the first woman who I really liked it after my mum, and I understood that he didn't want it that easy refuse this relationship. He asked us all to try to fix it communication. I decided that for Dad's sake, I'll try to control myself. Despite how they behaved, that family council. After that, their behavior changed again, because they already brought to light, and now instead to pretend that they are kind in front of Dad and hamper me behind his back. They just chose a different path, completely stopped talking to me. When Dad wasn't around, they pretended as if I don't exist at all. Honestly, saying that I was okay with it. At least not climbed and didn't interfere. So I'm glad of this attitude. For Dad's sake, they performed a play called A Happy Family. And so it went on. For a whole year now. I don't understand why they started behaving like this in general. I don't. Did nothing that could provoke them to such behavior. Well, apparently they are just F. And the fact that they did it recently, it just confirms my point of view. The next day after my 18th birthday, that is 3 days ago, my dad and I were having breakfast, and I took him aside to talk about what I overheard the night before. I asked him if it was true that Susan and Nadia is angry that they won't go with us to India. He said that yes, they quite upset, but he knew how important this trip is for me, and I understood that we weren't the best relationships, even if we try pretend in front of him. That's why I wanted it to be something special and just for the two of us. Moreover, it was and also around the anniversary of my mother's death, so that everything matched perfectly, and he wanted to spend this time with me. Susan he was going to calm Nadezhda down later, but now we only had to think about trip. I already said after I took several vacations with Susan and Nadezhda realized that it was simply unbearable with them to relax. Dad and I are explorers, where you need to go somewhere all the time. Watch, study, enjoy each moment in a new place, and they prefer to sit in the hotel and do nothing to do. If we were delayed even for little by little, they started calling without stops and forced us to come back for dinner, even if we wanted to wander around longer. And for us, it shouldn't be on vacation. There will be no rules, only freedom, adventure, cultural immersion, and the atmosphere of a new place. They don't understand. India was supposed to become something special for us. We didn't want that they came with us and ruined everything with its limitations. I don't think that there is something wrong with this because that if it comes to that, Suzanne and Nadi also had separate short ones trips over the last couple of years, and they didn't take me with them. So there is not the slightest reason to be angry. The only difference was that when Susan and Nadia went somewhere, the two of us, these were always nearby places and they were absent for a maximum of a day, 2 or 3. And my dad and I were getting ready to fly all the way to India for 10 days. Maybe it was the main difference. But other than that, I thought we were acting absolutely fair enough. When Dad told me not to worry and promised that he would sort it out, Suzanne and Nadia, after we will be back from vacation, I was on 7th. I'm over the moon. I was really looking forward to this. Trips in the last 2 days, I tried not to be distracted by and not to be upset because I'm going to India. I started packing. Yesterday, everything it was packed. And today, we had to fly out. But unfortunately, now I doubt that this is even possible because I don't have to deal with Suzanne and Nadia led to the fact that they simply burned my passport. Yes, you heard me correctly. I'm not joking at all. They literally burned my passport and we found out about this just a couple of hours ago. It's 2 a.m. now, and I was somewhere around 6 o'clock p.m. I rummaged through the documents to put everything together and not search through different bags. I kept my passport in my bag, and when started to double check the contents to make sure everything is in place, realized that he's not here. I searched the whole house, turned everything upside down in search passports, and after 45 minutes of searching it became clear that he was nowhere to be found, and I started to really panic. And then at that moment they came into my room, Susan and Nadia, and with such a saccharine tone asked if I had lost anything. Although I immediately had suspicions that there was something wrong with their voices, I couldn't refuse help. I said that I lost my passport and I can't find it anywhere. Although she had already climbed all over the house. She asked if they knew where he was. Susan threw a half-burnt one on my bed and completely ruined passport and asked, "Is this what you were looking for?" I was in shock, just in a stupor. I even didn't know how to react. Most of the passports were burned, and it is clear that they won't accept it at passport control. In fact, I no longer have passports. They looked like this pleased when they saw mine, a dumbfounded look. I think I was just numb for a few minutes. When it dawned on me what had happened, I decided that I wouldn't give them pleasure. See me cry. I put my passport aside, to the side, silently stood up, closed the door right in front of their noses, locked herself in room, and only then burst into tears. I was in the store at that moment, buying more put-on clothes for hot weather. I immediately wrote to him asking him to come back urgently home, and in the message itself she described that happened so that it wouldn't have to happen later, explain everything in words. I even attached photo of a burned passport. Soon it was at home. I didn't leave the room and I opened the door and just gave it to him. The opportunity to figure it out myself. I realized from his scream that he was back home. He started yelling at Susan and Nadia, literally from the doorway. I called them psychopaths and ordered them to get out of at home because he won't allow it. They treated his daughter like that. He said that he had already made a mistake once when I ignored the first case, which I talked about when they were leading treat me like scum, and I was only going to repeat this mistake because I once loved Susan. I heard Suzanne and Nadia playing a prank, the scene with the crying below, and tried to hang. They told him Noodles that the passport allegedly burned because I left it on the dresser and I forgot a cigarette nearby, which I didn't put it out, and that's how it caught fire. It was a stupid lie. And at that moment I decided I needed to intervene and went down to put them in place. Dad, he knows perfectly well that I don't even smoke, so that it was all complete bullshit. When I came out, he said that I was just in time because I was going to do something to balance everything out. I thought that he's going to call the police, but I did something much cooler. I still didn't understand what he was getting at, but he went to his office and returned with some papers. I had no idea, what is this? But from Nadia's face immediately it was clear that this was something important. Through a minute Dad tore up the documents right in front of him, Susan's right in front of me. Only later I found out that these were papers, student loan that Dad had. I was going to help Nadia. She needed to take out a loan to pay for my studies college because her mother didn't save up money for her. She has already started applying applications, but the money was still in limbo. Dad wanted to help her, having become a guarantor together with Yaz, because that he was doing better financially than she has. Because they burned mine passport. It would be fair that Nadia also lost something important. After Dad tore up those documents, he ordered Susan and Nadia to get out of the house. They tried to argue and persuade him change his mind, almost on his knees, but he was unwavering and made it clear that he's not going to change his mind. In an hour they were no longer there, but now they are begging. I'm being bombarded with messages, and now several hours in a row since left, especially Nadia. She begs me and writes that she is ready to do everything to make amends. The main thing is that I talked to Dad and convinced him again become a guarantor so that she can take student loan. After all, with Dad, they say it will be easier to pay it off than with Susan. And they swear they didn't know that he was going to do it. They say they are really sorry. They just felt it's a shame that Dad didn't even think about them take with them. and they felt strangers in the family. I decided to answer this message and reminded them that they two together, like mother and daughter. Many times we went on vacation. So why is this? It's unfair if I want to spend my 18th birthday with Dad alone, especially since Nadia has my father, and let him live in another state and has no guardianship, but she still sees him at least a couple of times a month. And my mother died many years ago, and my dad and I just wanted to do this a trip in her honor. And even that they didn't give me, they didn't allow it. So what do you demand from me? Help right now is a disaster. It's unfair because what they did to me was vile, but what happened to Nadia in the end is absolutely right. And now she lost all right to ask me anything, even forgiveness. But Nadia continues to write, begs. I tried to block it, but it still stops me. Probably because maybe it really isn't. It was very fair to arrange such a thing, a trip just for the two of us, without thinking neither about Nadia nor about Suzaz. They leave only for 2-3 days and somewhere not far away. And we were going to India 10 whole days. That's really long. So here I am to ask, I bad that I wanted to go with my father to 10 days international travel without stepmother and stepsister. Well, before we continue, I suggest you write to me right now. The comments contain an answer to the author's question. Personally, I think there is nothing to think about here. The situation is quite clear. And the author, she is not guilty of anything. She acted absolutely right. Well, this is Nadia and Susan. Of course, is just stupidly terrible people who are of great importance to them in life, many. And, of course, I understand the reasons Nadia and Susan have this kind of behavior. But however, this does not justify their Negro, but on the contrary, it only makes the whole situation worse situation. Terrible behavior, terrible education. There's more to add here. Nothing. But it's a pity nevertheless. Father, who found himself in such a situation. When you love a woman, it would seem that she loves you completely satisfied in most cases moments. But that's how she allows herself to. But since she does this to herself allows, then, in principle, I think she and in other moments I could do something for myself, allow something bad to happen. So it's good that he breaks up with her. Now let's find out what happened next. Update 1. Hello. Before I want to tell you what happened next, let's clarify a couple of things first. First of all, we didn't call the cops when I found out that they destroyed my passport because we didn't want to start from this legal showdown. At that moment, it just didn't seem that way necessary. And to be honest, I don't even need it. It didn't occur to me. I was in complete shock and panic. Even if I had called the police, it's unlikely that anything would have happened. Because to prove that they burned a passport specifically, it would take up a lot of time. They would blame it all on an accident. And for them, it would be end of story. So why did I need to spend time on this? Secondly, they asked me why I wasn't in college yet. Well, I graduated from high school last year, and then I decided to take a year off to understand myself and my life. This year I worked in several places, and I already have a little experience in the field. I want to go into journalism. I interned at different editorial offices, and I roughly understand how everything works arranged. Now I have already started submitting college applications, and Nadezhda and I have to start school at the same time. Luckily, my grandparents will pay for my studies in full, so Dad doesn't have to worry about that. And me too. For Nadia, unfortunately, it's different. That's exactly it. That's why Dad was going to help her with student loan by becoming a guarantor. After all, he knew that Susan was all on edge because of this nerves. Her biological father refused. He thinks that Nadia should pay for herself. And Susan, on the contrary, I'm sure my daughter needs support because college is stressful enough, and also money. In general, it was theirs problem. I didn't interfere. I found out about this was only a couple of days ago when I talked to my dad, and he told me that for the documents he then tore up Nadia's eyes. Now to this day I was supposed to fly to India, but since I don't have a passport anymore, that's impossible. That's why my dad and I stayed at home and watched old movies all day, who used to love, so that at least somehow to unwind. And frankly speaking, it helps. I also blocked Nadia and Susan because I don't like them at all. It's a shame. You were right. I blamed myself for nothing. I think a lot of it was because that I missed my mother and was in a very emotional state. Probably, I was just too touched. I blocked him and now let him beg as much as you like. It won't help them. They set me up for no reason. so that everything that is happening to them now, they absolutely deserved it. Update 2. Hello. It's been 4 days since my last post, and today Dad came home from work and said me that he filed for divorce. After that, we had a conversation which, to be honest, it should have happened a long time ago happen. That very family council where we sat down and discussed how things had changed Nadia's behavior, and Susan's after Susan married her dad. It turned out meaningless because after that nothing has changed. Instead of change their behavior, they just stopped communicating with me altogether. And this is not how a family should behave. Dad sat me down and said that for a long time was selfish and thought only of himself. But now he realized that all this was harmful for both of us and that he will be better off without this woman. Obviously, she wasn't the one, the person he was supposed to be with. He may have been in love with her, but she didn't love him enough to accept me and at least just behave in a human way. He admitted that I guessed the reason why she didn't accept that she could never perceive me as part of the family. And most likely I felt that for my dad, I would always be in the first place. And she and Nadezhda never won't be able to replace me. Perhaps that's why Susan felt jealous and insecurity towards me. Father will probably never know the exact reason why their behavior changed. They were kind to me before, but now, after the wedding, they were like different people. Dad, I tried to turn a blind eye to it because thought that no one really cared about it's in the way. But now he's had enough because that the damage has already been done. He no longer is going to pretend that we have happy family and nothing else is needed to portray something to anyone. Not to them, not to us. We are not a happy family. Period. That's it. There is reality. And Dad finally became, I'm ready to accept it. Therefore, on the same day after talking with a lawyer, he filed for divorce. And now the divorce proceedings, it's about to start. He apologized to me for everything I had to go through pass by because of him. And we just hugged. Someone might think that he, in principle, not a very good father, but for he will always be the best for me. Yes, maybe he did something wrong. Yes, sometimes he thought only of himself. But I will forgive all this, because for each of his the error was tens of times greater than that he did the right thing. And I don't think that I could dream of a better father. I love him and will always love him. Update 3. Looks like Susan is today officially served with divorce papers. Dad came home from work earlier than usual and since then I have locked myself in my office. I periodically hear him yelling at someone else. I don't quite understand what happens, but when it comes out, I'll definitely ask. He didn't even talk with me since I came back home, and I'm honestly worried about what will happen further. But I know he can handle it. It's been 5 days since he filed divorce, and I'm just assuming that it was today that the documents were handed over to her, because otherwise I can't explain it behavior. Since I blocked Suzanne and Nadia, they had no contact and they are no longer they tried to reach me in no other ways. They were lucky because if they had tried, I would have had something to give them say. I'm still incredibly angry about everything. What happened? Well, okay, I guess we'll just go to India another time. Now it will definitely be after divorce. And since I'm going to college in a couple of months, I don't even know when will we have enough time for such a trip. I hope that one day she will take place. Update 4. Hello. Now, quite late, but a couple of hours ago Dad finally came out of his office and told why he screamed so much the phone. It turned out that Susan had called and started threatening him. Like, if he will try to divorce her, she will go into attack with a bunch of lies, accusations, and will tell anything about him. Just so he lost everything that was so hard-earned money. He came home from work early because I didn't want to sort this out problem right in the office. He yelled because that I argued with her for a long time phone. The first time she called, when he was still at work, and I took him by surprise. So he didn't immediately. I got my bearings and couldn't write it down threats. Well, when I returned home, already was ready and wrote down everything she carried. Then he told her directly that if he will try to ruin our lives, he uses this recording against her. Susan immediately turned everything upside down and accused him of attempting blackmail. It's a crazy circus. But in the end, Dad clearly made it clear to her that if she were to lie about him or try to slander him during the divorce proceedings, he will do everything to finally ruin her life. He didn't completely. I'm sure what will happen next. But he says it was clear from her voice that Susan, I was scared. So you can consider it victory. He said that the process will begin soon, and as soon as everything will be finished, we will fly with him to India. He promised me. Now I hope that everything will go smoothly and Susan won't cause us any unnecessary trouble. She knows it in advance. A losing battle. In the end, I still have proof of that how she and her crazy daughter burned my passport. So if they will try to go too far, for them it will end badly. In short, that's it now. It really started. Music update 5. Hello. This is going to be very short update because I'm terribly busy. I wanted to let you know that a couple of weeks ago the divorce finally took place and Dad just pulled it out jackpot. Susan won't get it. Nothing. And that's how it should be. We keep everything that belongs to us. And the same thing it concerns Susan. Nobody lost anything and didn't acquire it, although she tried to milk it out from the father maximum and as a settlement agreements, and in the form of alimony and even child benefits, as if that were even a thing it could have worked. In short, it's a scam, completed, and Dad and I have already started prepare for a trip to India now. It will definitely happen. I already have a new passport, and I'm just absolutely delighted. Right now, I'm just really happy and I wanted to share this with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for all the comments and support. Well, that's where the whole story ends. I would like to know your opinion. Also, is the father ultimately to blame or not? What do you think? Do you think after that family council, father should have realized that nothing changed and kick out the wife earlier? Or after all, he did the right thing by giving it to her a chance? It's just that. Of course, on the one hand, it's easy to blame the father and say that yes, he is entirely to blame. But on the other hand, I completely understand his difficult choice. Well, the guy didn't want to face it completely reality, especially considering that I've already lost my first wife. And then this new one, the girl he liked so much. But in fact, I think it's still him. He is guilty, although one can understand him absolutely. And thank you for watching this video to the end. Watch out the previous video. You will see here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason it's not already done. And good luck to you.